Sheriff Darnell Briggs, a name and face synonymous with law and order in Harmony Creek County, found his peace increasingly disturbed by the persistent presence of Karen, a self-proclaimed neighborhood watch captain with an uncanny ability to insert herself into everyone else's business. Darnell, a man of routine and principle, took pride in his well-maintained property, a small oasis of tranquility that included a sparkling blue pool. This pool, however, became the focal point of Karen's unwelcome attention. It began subtly, with Darnell noticing the pool gate ajar, a damp footprint near the lounge chairs, small indications that someone had been using his pool without permission. He initially brushed it off, attributing it to neighborhood kids, thinking they were just having some fun. But the subtle intrusions gradually escalated, transforming from harmless curiosity into blatant trespassing. One sweltering afternoon, Darnell returned from a particularly taxing shift, mentally anticipating a refreshing dip in his own pool, a ritual he craved after long hours of dealing with the county's woes. As he turned into his driveway, his jaw nearly dropped. There, floating serenely on a bright pink inflatable raft, was Karen. She was sporting oversized sunglasses, looking as though she owned the entire property. In one hand, she held a half-empty box of wine, and the other, stick of string cheese. It was a scene so surreal that Darnell paused, momentarily stunned. "Relax, Darnell," she chirped, as if she were doing him a favor. "You were at work anyway. Figured I'd put it to good use." The audacity of her statement momentarily robbed him of his composure. His pool was his sanctuary, not a public utility for the neighborhood busybody. He calmly but firmly told her to leave, explaining that it was private property, and he didn't appreciate her being there without his permission. Karen, however, was unfazed. She launched into a tirade about community spirit, arguing that since he, as sheriff, was a public servant, his pool was practically a public resource. She implied that he should be grateful she was keeping it occupied and preventing it from becoming a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Darnell, a man trained to remain calm under pressure, refused to engage in an argument. He reiterated his demand for her to leave, making it clear that her presence was unwelcome. Karen, with a dramatic sigh, reluctantly pulled herself out of the pool, dripping water everywhere, and made her way to the gate. As she passed him, she muttered something about ungrateful neighbors and the importance of community. This was the turning point for Darnell. The nonchalant trespassing, the entitlement, it was all too much. He knew he had to take action, to protect his privacy and deter future incursions. He began to document everything. He installed security cameras around his property, capturing time-stamped photos and videos of Karen's repeated trespasses. He meticulously logged each incident, creating a comprehensive record of her behavior. Despite the mounting evidence, confronting Karen directly proved to be an exercise in futility. Each time Darnell attempted to address the issue, she would skillfully twist the narrative, portraying herself as the victim and him as the aggressor. She accused him of harassment, claiming he was targeting her because she was keeping an eye on things. She even threatened to file a formal complaint against him, alleging that he was abusing his position as sheriff to intimidate her. Her accusations were unfounded and absurd. But Darnell knew that in the court of public opinion, perception often outweighed reality. He worried about the potential damage to his reputation, the possibility that Karen's slanderous claims could undermine his authority and erode public trust. Determined to avoid a public confrontation, Darnell decided to change his strategy. He ceased arguing with Karen altogether, realizing that any engagement only fueled her delusion. Instead, he resolved to meticulously gather evidence, building an airtight case that would leave no room for her usual manipulation. He researched trespassing laws, consulted with legal experts, and compiled a detailed dossier of Karen's unlawful activities. He decided that the best course of action was to fight fire with fire, in a legal and ethical manner. He began to explore alternative methods to deter her from trespassing, seeking a creative solution that would not only stop her unwanted visits, but also teach her a valuable lesson about respecting boundaries. This led him to reflect on his time in the Navy, a period of intense training where he learned a multitude of skills, including some unconventional techniques that could be repurposed for civilian use. He recalled a specific training exercise involving invisible tracers, liquids designed to mark objects or individuals for various purposes. One particular tracer, A vibrant orange dye used for aerial visibility caught his attention. However, a more intriguing tracer surfaced in his memory. A harmless yet incredibly irritating substance employed in training simulations. This tracer, while completely legal and non-toxic, possessed a unique property. When activated by sunlight, it induced an intense itching sensation, as if countless tiny insects were crawling beneath the skin. The effect was temporary but profoundly unpleasant, serving as a powerful deterrent without causing any lasting harm. Darnell recognized the potential of this tracer as the perfect solution to his Karen problem. It was subtle, non-violent, and, most importantly, it would leave Karen with a lasting reminder of the consequences of her actions. He knew that employing this tracer required careful planning and execution. He needed to ensure that he wouldn't be accused of assault or any other wrongdoing. Darnell spent the next few days meticulously preparing his plan. He acquired a bottle of the training simulation tracer, ensuring it was the correct formula and completely safe. He researched the legal implications of using such a substance, confirming that it was indeed legal and non-toxic, posing no risk to anyone's health. He carefully considered the optimal method for introducing the tracer into the pool water, aiming for a discreet and subtle approach that wouldn't arouse Karen's suspicion. He decided to capitalize on Karen's predictable routine. She seemed to have a particular fondness for his pool on hot Friday afternoons, when she assumed he would be occupied. With his duties as sheriff, Darnell patiently waited for the perfect opportunity, monitoring Karen's movements and anticipating her next intrusion. He kept a close eye on the weather forecast, eagerly awaiting a scorching hot Friday that would maximize the tracer's effectiveness. The day finally arrived, a sweltering Friday afternoon, with the sun beating down mercilessly. Darnell knew that Karen would be unable to resist the allure of his pool on such a day. He strategically positioned himself, ready to execute his plan. As anticipated, he soon pulled into his driveway to discover Karen once again luxuriating in his pool. This time, she had upped the ante, bringing along a portable speaker that was blasting country music at an obnoxiously loud volume. She was also sporting an oversized straw hat, adding to the image of brazen entitlement. Darnell suppressed his initial surge of anger, reminding himself to remain calm and focus on the task at hand. Karen, oblivious to his presence, continued to float idly in the pool, completely unaware of the subtle trap that was about to be sprung. Darnell quietly parked his patrol car and walked around to the garage, slipping out with the bottle of tracer liquid concealed in his hand. He strolled casually toward the pool, pretending to be watering the plants, a common activity that wouldn't raise any suspicion. Karen glanced up, noticing his approach. She waved, a smug grin plastered across her face. "Finally, you're being friendly," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Darnell plastered on his most polite smile and replied, "Hot day today, huh?" Karen nodded enthusiastically. "You know what makes a day like this better?" Darnell continued, his voice calm and measured. "Vitamin D and a splash of citrus." With that, he dramatically uncapped the bottle of tracer liquid and, with a deliberate flourish, slowly poured the orange liquid directly into the pool water. The tracer, being odorless and colorless, instantly mixed with the water, becoming completely undetectable. Karen, still floating on her raft, didn't notice a thing. Darnell, his mission accomplished, casually sat down on a nearby lounge chair with an iced tea, pretending to relax and enjoy the afternoon sun. He watched Karen closely, patiently waiting for the tracer to take effect. 5 minutes passed, and Karen began to fidget. She scratched her shoulder, then her leg, then both arms. Her relaxed demeanor gradually shifted to one of increasing discomfort. "Are there bugs out here?" she yelled, her voice laced with irritation. She splashed water on herself, hoping to alleviate the itching sensation, but the water only seemed to amplify the effect. Within minutes, Karen was thrashing in the water, her screams echoing throughout the neighborhood. She frantically slapped at her skin, convinced that she was being swarmed by insects. "Fire ants! Acid rain!" she shrieked, her voice bordering on hysteria. She attempted to climb out of the pool, but her slippery skin betrayed her, causing her to lose her grip and fall back into the water. In her flailing, she knocked over the portable speaker, abruptly cutting off the music mid-Jolene. Darnell, maintaining his composure, simply sat there, sipping his iced tea and observing the unfolding chaos. He watched with a sense of detached amusement as Karen's previously arrogant and entitled demeanor crumbled under the weight of the increasingly unbearable itching. Finally, as she sat on the deck scratching herself repeatedly, Darnell decided to interject. "You might be experiencing an adverse reaction to consequences," he said calmly, a hint of irony in his voice. Karen, her face red with frustration and covered with water, turned to him, her eyes wide with panic. "What did you do to me?" she screamed, her voice hoarse. Darnell smiled. "You're sitting in a law enforcement tracer used for trespassers. Harmless, non-toxic, but itchy as hell when you're where you don't belong." Karen's eyes widened in disbelief and rage. She bolted out of the pool, wrapping herself in a towel like a tornado, her movements frantic and uncoordinated. She stumbled toward her phone, which she had left on a nearby table, and immediately dialed 911 again. Darnell chuckled softly to himself. He knew that calling 911 was a big mistake on her part, a move that would only further expose her unlawful behavior. Unbeknownst to Karen, the 911 dispatcher on duty was none other than Darnell's trusted partner, Deputy Johnson. Johnson had been fully apprised of the entire plan, and he was ready to play his part. When Karen frantically reported that she was being attacked by invisible bugs in Darnell's pool, Johnson calmly took down the information, all the while suppressing a chuckle. He assured Karen that help was on the way, but he secretly dispatched 2 squad cars to the scene with a very specific set of instructions. Within 5 minutes, the squad cars arrived, sirens silent, lights flashing. The officers, having been briefed by Johnson, approached Karen with a mixture of professionalism and suppressed mirth. They listened patiently as she ranted about conspiracies, invisible government juice, and Darnell's supposed abuse of power, stopping her only to ask her to state her name and business on the property. Little did Karen know, while she was busy, calling the police and attempting to deflect blame, she had overlooked one crucial detail. The entire incident was being live recorded. Darnell had strategically placed 3 high-definition security cameras around his pool area, capturing every moment of Karen's trespassing and subsequent meltdown from multiple angles. The footage was clear, concise, and damning. As the officers calmly questioned Karen, they revealed a shocking twist. They informed her that they had already connected her to 5 other neighborhood trespassing complaints, including instances of pool hopping, mail theft, and even a bizarre incident involving her feeding someone else's cat and then claiming it as her own. Karen was visibly stunned, her carefully constructed facade of innocence crumbling before her very eyes. The officers then pointed to the security cameras, informing her that her current antics were also being recorded and would be used as evidence against her if she chose to press charges against Sheriff Briggs. Realizing the gravity of her situation, Karen's veneer finally broke as she dropped the towel in her frantic scratching, revealed multiple red blotches covering her skin from the UV-activated irritation of the tracer. She started scratching, like a maniac, her movements becoming increasingly erratic and desperate. She sprinted away from the officers, barefoot and soaking wet, shrieking incoherently about conspiracies, invisible government juice, running directly to her luxury sedan. The officers just watched as she sped off. In a state of utter disarray, Karen drove directly to the nearest urgent care. She burst through the doors, demanding immediate attention, convinced that she was suffering from a severe allergic reaction or some other mysterious malady. The triage nurse, accustomed to dealing with eccentric patients, calmly assessed Karen's condition. After a thorough examination, the nurse confirmed that there was no injury, no rash, no hives, no sign of any allergic reaction, just itch. The nurse prescribed an over-the-counter antihistamine cream and advised her to avoid exposure to direct sunlight for a few hours. Karen, refusing to accept this diagnosis, demanded to see a doctor. The doctor, after another examination, confirmed the nurse's findings. There was nothing medically wrong with Karen. Her symptoms were likely caused by some sort of skin irritation, possibly from a bug bite or a plant allergy. The doctor suggested that she try taking a cool bath with oatmeal and apply calamine lotion to the affected areas. Karen left the urgent care in a state of bewildered disbelief. She couldn't understand what had happened to her. She was convinced that Darnell had somehow poisoned her, but the medical professionals had found nothing to support her claims. Meanwhile, Back at Darnell's house, the security footage was being reviewed and compiled into a comprehensive report. The report, along with the evidence from the other trespassing complaints, was presented to the local prosecutor. After reviewing the evidence, the prosecutor decided to press charges against Karen for multiple counts of trespassing, petty theft, and public nuisance. The case against her was airtight, and she had no viable defense. Karen, facing the prospect of jail time and a ruined reputation, finally realized the gravity of her actions. She attempted to reach out to Darnell, begging him to drop the charges, but he refused. He had given her ample opportunities to stop her behavior, but she had ignored his warnings and continued to trespass on his property. The court hearing was a media circus. Karen's outlandish behavior had become a source of amusement for the entire county, and everyone was eager to see how the story would end. In the end, Karen pleaded guilty to all charges. She was sentenced to community service, fined heavily, and ordered to stay away from Darnell's property and the properties of her other victims. The news of Karen's downfall spread quickly throughout the neighborhood. The residents of Harmony Creek County finally had their peace restored, knowing that the self-proclaimed patrol officer was no longer free to meddle in their lives. From that day forward, Darnell's pool remained undisturbed, a testament to the consequences of crossing the sheriff, and more importantly, respecting boundaries. The incident also served as a valuable lesson for anyone else tempted to trespass on private property. Sometimes, the most effective forms of justice are the ones you can't see coming.